going to do what we often do when we run into a jam, which is that we send in the Marine. So I'm thrilled to have you join me on stage. My co-author, my friend, and frankly, one of my heroes. Please join me in welcoming retired Marine Colonel Puck Mykleby. Thank you, Joel. So this is not just a light rail vehicle. This is a vehicle for our future. And what we wrote a book about here is really how things like this can transform economies, can transform a nation, and in some ways can change the world in the direction of prosperity, security, and sustainability. So I want to talk a little bit about it and sort of where it's going and what this means for all of us, and really sort of how, first a little bit about how this came about. So Puck, just let's get into it here.
Sure. Hey, thanks. Yeah, we can crank out this book, but for me, this journey. I'm here to tell you I'm a late arrival to the sustainability party. So, but just glad to be here. And for me, I arrived there, believe it or not, in the Pentagon. And in the book, we really focus in on something that Thomas Paine said, 1776. So what is it? He said on the very first page of Common Sense. The cause of America is in a great measure the cause of all mankind. Well, we want to focus in on that piece, on the book. Really asking the question, what are we for as a nation? I mean, holy cow, I can tell you exactly what we're against. I know what we're not for, but what the hell are we for? And I think that was a sense that Admiral Mullen in 2009 had got yanked up to the Pentagon to work for him, and he asked me and a Navy captain, Wayne Porter, he said, consider this idea. I mean, where are we going in the 21st century? What are we for? He was asking us to take a look at this thing called grand strategy, this organizing logic that can take us into the 21st century in some kind of way that actually maps to America's cause. And so what we ended up doing, Wayne, and I don't know what Mullen wanted, but this is what he got. We wrote a paper called The National Strategic Narrative, and I'll just cut right to the chase. We said we have got to get back to being the land of opportunity. We got to stop being the stinking land of threat and risk and start focusing on where we're going, what we're going to do, what we're going to be in the 21st century. And the only way to get there is through sustainability. Yeah, I said it. I just dropped the F-bomb in church, so get over it. And we're saying this kind of stuff out of the Pentagon because it is our reality. With a little bit of intellectual and a little bit of emotional honesty, how are we going to make it in the 21st century? How are we going to pursue our enduring interests of prosperity and security? And we said sustainability was the path. Because in a very pragmatic sense, in the world that we see today, our smart growth at home is going to become our smart power abroad. And that just happens to also map to a quintessentially unique American way of doing grand strategy. There's a tagline up there, but the bottom line is we stand on our economy. We let the economy do the heavy lifting, and then we align our governing institutions, our foreign policy to take on whatever the big challenge of our age is. And that challenge is the biggest challenge. Next slide, please. The big challenge that we are facing today, we got to come to grips with, is not China, it's not stinking Iran, it's not Russia, as much as I like Vladimir and Trump, buddies. We sure as hell isn't ISIS. The big challenge we're facing today is the wicked problem of our generation, and it's come down to this thing called global unsustainability. I know it's not a word, but we're making it up as we go, all right? Global unsustainability, it's four big, wicked problems that are intertwined, and you can't take on each one in a reductionist approach as a one-off. You got to take on the whole set. And this global unsustainability thing is about, we have to fold in 3 billion new middle-class consumers by the middle of the century. Yeah, 9 billion people stumbling around the world is kind of a tough thing, but 3 billion global middle class is tough because that leads to problem set, the second part of the problem set, which is ecosystem depletion and climate change, and all that stuff goes into it. Because when those 3 billion arrive into the world, guess what? Their resource consumption rate goes up 300%. And right now, we're operating on 1.5 planets worth of resources. That's kind of a problem. But in the middle of the century, it's going to take 4.5 planets. So look out the window, I only see one, unless somebody's got one in their pocket somewhere. All right? Which leads us to number 3 in the problem set is we're really kind of hoping that the economy will come back to pre-2008. Well, it's gone. We're not in a great recession, we're in a contained depression. 2008 was a big deleveraging moment, same thing that happened in 1929. It's time to design anew because that system's not going to support what our requirements are going into the 21st century. And even if it could, we could get through this contained depression. The bottom line is we're on an empty shell because the system itself, we have a huge resilience deficit. Whether it's our infrastructure, whether it's our financial markets, that stuff is subject to shock. And when Mother Nature gets pissed off and she starts throwing them our way, that thing is going to collapse because guess what? We're still doubling down on that old system. And oh, by the way, in case you haven't figured it out, there's a little bit of political dysfunction out there. So woe is us. The problem set's bad. It's vexing. It's huge. But here's the good news, folks. Sustainability. Next slide, please. We have a way forward. We just have to dust off our old grand strategy playbook. You know, and there's this cool little formula, and we've done it, we've used this formula. Remember I talked about we stand on our economy? Well, let's just focus on the stinking economy, and sustainability points us to that way. I mean, all we got to do is find big bins of demand, big pools of demand, shove some capital that way, take care of some stranded assets, you know, the things that had value in the old economy that don't have value now. And when we do that, we've got a new economic engine. So strap on your sustainability goggles because Joel's going to show you where the market's taking us and how sustainability is going to drive us to a new era of prosperity and security.
So how do we bring back this demand that lifts the economy so that we're not operating our economy, driving our economy primarily on monetary policy the way we do now? And so what are the three big pools of demand? And they're very, very big. So the first one is for walkable communities. Between now and 2030, the boomers and the millennials are going to be competing for housing in cities. They want to live there. Everybody wants to live there. It's where they want to be. It's a massive opportunity. This is 3 times the housing demand that we had after World War II. So this is truly demand of historic proportions. What's happening is that my generation, the boomers, are downsizing. We don't want to get stuck in the suburbs. The kids take away the car keys, and we're shoveled off to some nursing home or retirement community. And we want to be where the action is, walkable, cities. And millennials also want to be there. This is where they grew up. This is where they are learning to be, or just where they want to be. And so they're now showing up for open houses and competing against one another. And this is going on across America. If you look at the demand, 60% of Americans say that they want basically the attributes of a smart city. If you ask that, this is according to the National Association of Realtors. They want transit-oriented, mixed-use, service-rich, opportunity-dense, walkable communities, and we just don't have very much of this. So the demand is $225 billion annual demand, not just for the housing, but for the infrastructure and things that go around that. And by the way, it's not just walkable cities, it's walkable communities. So how do we retrofit the suburbs to create more of the new urban environments where things are walkable and green space and all of the things that we think about when we talk about smart, resilient, green, sustainable cities? Number 2, regenerative agriculture. In order to feed all these mouths, we're going to need somewhere between 60 to 70%, according to OECD, more food than we produce today. And 100% of that has to be done regeneratively. That means that we're cleansing our water, we're restoring our soil, and we're sequestering carbon. And that's very different. The problem is that most of our agricultural policy are still based on the Nixon administration, good old Earl Butz, where we're planting monocrop, row to row, or fence post to fence post, at large scale with massive inputs. That's not sustainable. The good news is that regenerative agriculture yields 3 times the profits per acre. It's 30% more productive during droughts. And if we get this right, we have an incredible opportunity. This is another $200 billion a year opportunity. We have an opportunity to bring more land into production, cultivation. We have an opportunity to keep people on farms and inspire a new generation of farmers. The average farmer in America right now is 59 years old, and no spring chicken, so to speak. And we need to bring on a new generation. Oh, and by the way, we can create the regional, resilient food infrastructure that we need to withstand shocks of any kind, whether it's economic, political, terrorism, climate, certainly, health care. And so another big opportunity. And the third is the resource revolution. The biggest opportunity of all, and you know about this well, this is about how do we make things again? Because we've got these 3 billion people who are about to be knocking on the door of the middle class, And they're going to want a lot of stuff. How do we create this in a way that is not only less intensive, but maybe even zero intensive? The circular model, bio-based model, the renewable model, and all of the different things that so many of you and us are working on. This is an $850 billion opportunity annually. So all of this, you put it together, it's like $1.2 trillion. So Puck gave the formula that demand plus capital minus stranded assets. So where's the money come from? Well, this is not anything about Washington or Sacramento or any other capital. This is all actually about this amazing amounts of capital that's out there looking for a new investment hypothesis. There's $2.5 trillion of corporate cash. There's $3.5 trillion of institutional investors. There's $10 trillion of hedge funds and private equity, the cash portion of those funds that are sitting there. That's, I think, $16 trillion, if I got that right. And that's before we even get to another $24 trillion that are in all of our retirement accounts that, again, not all of that's going to go into these opportunities, but some portion of it can. And again, if the right financing mechanism is the right investment hypothesis. The stranded assets, well, we talk about a lot of them in the book. The one that I think everybody knows about is unburnable carbon. And there's this whole leave it in the ground movement that we can't bring up all this oil because there's, I don't know, by some estimates, $20 trillion worth of assets that need to be written off. And that's a really tough problem. We talk about sort of a different take on that, which is instead of burning hydrocarbons, instead of burning oil, we build with it. The materials revolution, again, so many of you are involved with or working on in carbon fibers and new kinds of plastics and materials that allow us to use the hydrocarbons to bring it out of the ground, but not burn it, not contribute to greenhouse gases. And by the way, we already do that with about 19–20% of all the oil that comes out of the ground. So how do we, 80% we're burning, how do we flip that? So 80, 90, maybe even 100% we're building, and by the way, replacing these hydrocarbons to replace steel and aluminum and concrete and other things that have huge energy, water, and climate change impacts. So there is a path forward here, and we can create this demand.
And so, get this all the time. Say, how can I help? I don't know. Figure it out. I'll tell you what we're doing. All right. In the process of writing the book, we just recognized, there's an opportunity here. Instead of just writing about it, maybe we ought to go where the meat meets the metal and actually put some skin in the game. So that's what we did. We started a company called Long Haul Capital Group. It was based on the stuff we found in the book, and we're saying, yeah, there is about $11 trillion of underperforming capital out there. Why don't we take a look at one of those big pools of demand, and we're looking at the walkable community stuff. So 60% of Americans want it. That's a pretty big demand signal. All right? So how do you activate that? Well, we took a look at, with that pent-up demand, how you can unlock that by creating this Long Haul Capital Group entity, where we are going to figure out how to aggregate the capital that's just sitting out there, right? Focus it in on that housing market, specifically smart growth, transit-oriented development, and recognizing right now our government just is not investing in the infrastructure anymore. That's a huge opportunity. So we'll fill that gap with all that capital that federal grants and financing aren't filling. At the same time, operating on the other side of the demand, what consumers want, and figure out the mortgage products, mash those things together, and at the same time, layer in all the systems that we need to live a sustainable or create a sustainable future. We're talking about whether it's data and fiber optics, we're talking water, we're talking energy. Layer those things in, fund what the government's not funding with private sector capital, and unleash a whole new renaissance in the built environment to be catalytic, not only in terms of economic growth, not only in terms of individual prosperity, but also the health, resilience, and vibrancy of our communities, our nations, and the world. That's what we're doing. Is that big talk from a little guy? Yeah. But if you better have some moxie and jump in the frickin' ring and better punch above your weight. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're trying to do with Long Haul Capital. That's what we offer you up, that there's all sorts of opportunities out there that any one of you can dive into.
So, yeah, I mean, one of the things I loved about doing this book, a couple things. One is that this really is about the best of the progressive left, if you will, around energy and climate change and water security, food security, housing security, taking care of people, and the end of the conservative, of this is by business, for profit. And Washington, frankly, you can lead, follow, or get out of the way. We have not talked anywhere along here about taxes, regulation, although frankly there are some perverse ones that sort of we could get rid of. But this is really an extraordinary opportunity. And I think the other part of the opportunity, and this gets back to our trolley car, is how these little pieces fit together, how this trolley car, this light rail car can really become part of a bigger thing. And that's part of what's going on here at Verge. And that's why I was so excited several years ago to meet Puck and his partner Patrick Doherty. And we got into this project and realized that we just aren't thinking big and doing big anymore, that we just, not thinking at the scale, speed, and scope that the problem demands. And to the extent that we do, we've long relied upon our leaders. I mean, we've talked moonshot. We've heard that word 20 times so far in the past 2 days. Moonshot was a government program, right? And so how do we do this without government? How does business do the heavy lifting? And so this is not one of those moments where we look to our leaders. Clearly, this is up to us, everyone in this room, and all of our companies, all of our organizations, and all of the incredible ideas that are in this room. How does 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equal a billion in terms of the impact that we all have? This is kind of the American way, frankly. This is what Americans do.
Yeah, and that's kind of what, the cats that wrote this document, Joel talking about thinking big and doing big. I mean, this is pretty big stuff that these guys wrote, right? I just have a point, and when I look at this document, I mean, yeah, I was a card-carrying member of the Marine Corps Club, so we swear an oath to this thing, piece of paper, kind of a special thing, the ideas therein. And it's pretty interesting. For me, this is the purpose statement of our nation. And in that, it articulates not only the promise of this country, but it also it articulates our obligation to it. And Joel talked about, we've got to think big and do big. It's time to just shit can our excuse matrix and say, well, when's somebody going to do something about something? Well, guess what? Look in the mirror. You're the somebody. I am too. All right? That's when I look at my kid, I got to step up to the plate. And the cool thing about this document, first of all, it says we the people of the United States. It doesn't say waiting on Washington. It says we the people of the United States in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and most importantly, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And Hubert Humphrey reminds us that all those words, form, establish, ensure, provide, promote, secure, are all verbs. They're action words, action, right? So where we had citizen soldiers in World War II, we now have citizen entrepreneurs. They're purpose-driven. Sustainability provides us this opportunity to go forward. The market forces are there. The capital is there. There are no excuses, right? But I mean, I'm telling you, this is it. This is our opportunity, not only to show the rest of the world what getting it right looks like, it also shows us that we still are that land of opportunity, that's who we are, right? That we can fulfill this promise that we said this form of government, of self-representation, of self-determination, that we can articulate our own way in life, that is a special thing. It's something worth diving into. All right? And in this document, in this cause of sustainability, if we embrace that, just as Thomas said, Thomas Paine, not only will we be taking on the cause of all mankind, we will be in a complete measure taking on the cause of this world. Thank you. Can I kiss you?